This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, some big matches for an upcoming pay-per-view. We've got some insight on what's going on there, as well as could this WWE superstar be hanging them up very, very soon? Of course, we're going to take a look at what took place with AEW and WWE. Doing it with me, as always, helping me break it all down and cut through all the minutia to give you the very best. He's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
A great week of wrestling. Lots of new storylines emerging. Lots of new belts. A return. So many good things to talk about. I'm excited this week. And then just coming off of a Tigers game where got to see Otis and Chad Gable interact with the fans, throw out the first pitch at Comerica Park. WWE night delivered on a high level. I loved it, where the players on the Tigers kind of use Photoshop to kind of put their heads on other wrestlers' bodies. And I thought Javi Baez being put on Cody Rhodes' body was hilarious. They used Seth Rollins, Big E, and it was great. The best one, Jake Rogers, hands down. Because of the beard that he had, they put his head on Sheamus's body, and it looked utterly hilarious. It was fun, and I like the fact that WWE is even weaved in the sports world in events locally here in Detroit. So I can't wait, because what is the first thing on the list, man? I can't wait to talk about this week's wrestling.
Well, I thought Raw this week was really, really impressive. And a couple of things that really impressed me. There were two standout segments to me, but what really impressed me were Kayden Carter and Katana Chance. These are two NXT superstars who got called up to the main roster. And I thought they had a very good showing with Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. And look, Ronda's been very outspoken about how she wants to basically strengthen the women's tag division, how she really wants to make it something of note. And I thought this went a long way towards that. Then you couple that with what we got on Smackdown, where you had the current NXT champs, Isla Fire, sitting there and taking out both Baszler and Rousey, setting up a match where they could unify those belts. Again, I thought this is solid. What we've got is we've got two superstars who are really doing good work to try to build and strengthen a division. I like that. But I was really impressed, and I was blown away by Carter and Chance. I thought they really stood out in their match. I thought it was awesome. I thought the Kevin Owens versus Gunther match was really, really cool too. Again, those aren't the two most standout segments. Those things impressed me. Was there anything that impressed you before we get to the standout segments?
Yeah, I loved seeing what Damian Priest, when he was given the ball, what he could do. He looks like a main eventer, and I think the opportunity that he had against Seth Rollins really highlighted what they have in Damian Priest. Now, of course, nobody believed that Damian Priest was going to end up being the champion, but he held his own. He looks the part. Tall, physical, and then I thought maybe you moved on a little too quick by having Finn Balor walk right into the ring, but I think that the planting of the seeds maybe of some dissension between Finn Balor and Damian Priest also will be something that will be needed to be monitored. I thought that was exciting. And yeah, Raw did a lot of good things of place setting for what's going to happen, especially with Miz TV. I thought that the crowd was great. The crowd was really into it. And I thought Raw really was one of those shows that sometimes tends to lag, but this last week, had a lot of intrigue and a lot of interesting storyline developments.
Yeah, I thought what we ended up getting from the Seth Rollins Open Challenge and what we got from Miz TV, those were the two segments that really stood out to me. Look, I was impressed with this entire show, but those two segments alone really stuck out to me. Seth Rollins laying down the Open Challenge. In my mind, I see him being the opposite as Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is there every other show, sometimes every third show, only really defends his belt on pay-per-views. It's not even every pay-per-view that he defends his belt. It seems so sporadic that Roman Reigns is there with his title. Seth Rollins issues the Open Challenge. Damian Priest accepts it. You talked about it. It was a great match. Damian Priest is viewed as a major superstar backstage, and he looks like he can hang with the top guys. Seth Rollins, obviously a top guy. So him issuing that open challenge, to me, it seems like they are really trying to differentiate what goes on SmackDown and what goes on Raw, and really differentiate a fighting champion like Seth Rollins compared to Roman Reigns, who, look, Roman Reigns still has the best story going, but it's awesome to see your champion out there fighting. And Seth Rollins taking fights from everybody. I mean, on NXT, Braun Breaker ended up calling Seth Rollins out. So it sounds like Seth Rollins next week will be fighting Braun Breaker on NXT television, which I think is interesting. I think that's great. So I think what they're trying to do is you're trying to create something completely different with Raw and the championship belt on Raw, where this is the fighting every man's champion. This is the guy who is constantly out there. Whereas on SmackDown with Roman Reigns, it's completely the opposite. Do you kind of feel that way? Do you feel like Seth Rollins' open challenge was basically laid out to help present him and help paint him in a different light than a guy like Roman Reigns and what Roman Reigns is doing with his title reign?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, though, you got to remember that Seth Rollins is maybe a year or two younger than Roman Reigns. So he doesn't have as much. I think he's got more in the tank. He's a fight. He likes to wrestle. That's it. Roman Reigns, I think that eventually at some point, when you look at how a performer's career eventually wants to go, you're wrestling, starting, let's say you're 27 years old. By a decade in, you're 37. You've traveled the world. That shit gets old. And if you can extend that out by wrestling just once a week then if you're a superstar, you got to remember, Roman Reigns put in his time. He did the grind. He did all that. He was there on a lot of shows. He was when the Shield was happening. He put in the work. So who doesn't like more money and less work? But Seth Rollins, now to get to that point where he can become an attraction, needs to kind of take the ball and move it. This is his run. This is probably going to be his last extended run where, okay, this is the guy that needs to show up on a lot of shows, do the tour, make the money, and then sail off into the sunset where you can kind of scale back a little bit. But absolutely, I think it's great. Seth Rollins is a worker, and for professional wrestling, to have a guy that wants to be in the ring and put in the work, it's absolutely fabulous because you get to see somebody that's fluid, has all the tools, really entertaining, and the crowd absolutely loves him. They can carry 5 minutes, just him standing there in the middle of the ring with the crowd chanting. So he put in the work to get over, and that's the definition of what you want to do. When you're over, why would you leave? You know what I mean? Why would you not take advantage of the fact that, okay, I'm over, did the work, now let's go reap the rewards, make a shit ton of money, and, which is now going to be the blessing, is he's going to make stars. Seth Rollins can do that. Damian Priest looks better now because he's in the ring with Seth Rollins. Finn Balor, who's been in the ring with Seth a million times, now in this kind of elevated type of feud and where this is going to go, will probably have an opportunity to move forward and look better. So I'm excited for the run, and let's just enjoy it and see how long it lasts for.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing that you said there was, you took the words right out of my mouth. Seth Rollins can help make stars. Damian Priest looked so good in this match. Damian Priest looked awesome in this match. Look, Damian Priest looks good regularly, but in the ring with Seth Rollins, he looked awesome. Somebody else who looked awesome during the Miz TV segment, I think it is fascinating to me to see just how different the crowd reaction between a guy like Cody Rhodes, who's the biggest babyface in the company, compared to a guy like Dominic Mysterio, who, if you haven't been paying attention, is the biggest heel in the company. Dominic Mysterio's boos rain down so loud, people can't even get the words to their promo out of their mouth because the crowd is whipped up into such a frenzy. I thought the Miz TV segment between Cody Rhodes and Dominic Mysterio was great. I thought it was great for a couple of different reasons. You had Cody Rhodes mention that Brock Lesnar has basically gone into his hibernation mode. We're not going to see him till SummerSlam. I've got some news on what might be taking place with that later on in news and notes. So you're not going to see Brock Lesnar around for a couple of months till August when SummerSlam starts to roll around. So what do? You insert him into a mini feud with arguably the biggest heel in the company. There's actually no argument. I'm telling you, Dominic Mysterio, the biggest heel in the company. The boos and people who just jeer him are so dominant and so loud. And he does such a great job being that chicken shit heel. He'll sit there, he'll pretend like he's walking away, turn around, smack you, and then instantly runs and hides behind Rhea Ripley, who Rhea Ripley looks like just a dominant force. Looks like she could mess up just about any guy out there, which is great because, again, where she was a few years ago to where she is now, I think is absolutely incredible. What did you think about this Miz TV segment? We're going to get Cody Rhodes versus Miz here, I believe, next week. But the long-term storyline is Cody Rhodes versus Dominic. You've got the biggest babyface in the company, who also mentioned having that Dominic has a worse face tattoo than he does, which I thought was absolutely great. Cody Rhodes versus Dominic Mysterio, who is the biggest heel in the company. What are your thoughts on this? And do you think this feud can help elevate both wrestlers, or do you think this feud will help elevate one wrestler over another wrestler?
Yeah, it's going to elevate Dominic for sure. I think that what an opportunity for Dominic, man. I think that he's just naturally a guy that people are going to love to hate, and they've done good work to put him in that position to be the ultimate heel. I think that that's great in regards to a character that has, taken the advantage. First and foremost, you get the opportunity because you're Rey Mysterio's son. But that doesn't mean you're going to last. There's been a ton of second-generation dudes that just don't, for whatever reason, just don't get that opportunity. Mr. Perfect's son comes to mind right away, where you're like, man, what an opportunity. I just wish that he would have did more. But now you're seeing some backstage success in regards to, second-generation wrestlers. And you realize, look, you get the opportunity, and at first he kind of looked corny, obviously with, being Raw and all that kind of stuff. Your first gimmick probably is not the best. Now you take it, and I think right when he went to jail, he just transformed, and working with the Judgment Day allowed him to kind of tap into that elevated character development where he's just this badass individual who is just annoying. And the crowd doesn't like it. And of course, you could say, well, it's a little easy when you target Rey Mysterio. But I think the way in which he's done his work has allowed him to elevate himself. And his work in the ring is getting better. A little bit more fluid, a little bit more psychology. And I think that's what happens when you have natural talent and you're somebody that's been around the business. You can take coaching and move forward. So this is going to be great. But you know what? To be honest, though, it's clear that Dominic's probably going to lose the feud. But you got to elevate the heat. You got to bring something more than trash talk, a little bit more than personal, something unique. I'm hoping that it can be something that is memorable, that he does potentially to mess with Cody, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, and look, I think this is something that might be getting missed in all of this too, right? Not only has Dominic really helped elevate his game, not only has Dominic really got to this level where he should be in the ring with the company's biggest babyface, Cody Rhodes, I think the addition of Rhea Ripley with him, I think there's something there, right? There's something kind of magical to them working together. Rhea Ripley, I think, has kind of been there, done that. I think she's really, this is going to sound weird, but I think she's really helped kind of guide and mentor him, really helped him get through some of those early promos. Those early promos were kind of rough. I think she kind of helped calm him down a little bit, calm his brain down, let him get out what he's got to get out. I think his in-ring work has really picked up. I think she has kind of helped tweak little things. Now, look, working with a guy like Finn Balor, who is absolutely incredible, and working with a guy like Damian Priest, who has really elevated his game, obviously, all that helps. But I think there's a bit of a security blanket there, knowing that Rhea Ripley's there, knowing that Rhea Ripley is there with him side by side. I think it helps him out, and I think it's part of his character, and I think it makes his character that much more interesting and makes him that much bigger of a heel. I think it's really, really impressive the way that how far he has come, because we used to shit on him. Like, we used to just call him out, and now he's about to enter into a pretty large feud here with Cody Rhodes. So, and that's going to help get Cody Rhodes set up for SummerSlam. This is basically what Cody Rhodes is going to be doing until we get Brock Lesnar back out of hibernation. So, I'm impressed with it. I thought it was a really great segment. I thought SmackDown this is probably one of the lower rated SmackDown shows that we've had in a while. I thought Raw was very good. I thought SmackDown left a little bit more to be desired. That being said, I still thought it was a good SmackDown show that we had. Now, SmackDown had a story that basically centered around Jey Uso making a decision to stay with the Bloodline or to side with his brother Jimmy. And I want to kind of get your take on some of the twists that we had, because there's a lot that went on with the show. And I just took some really quick notes as I was kind of putting this together. You had the announcement that Roman Reigns was going to train him to be the next tribal chief. Sounds like more mental masturbation coming from the tribal chief and Paul Heyman. Jey telling Paul Heyman that if he is in the bloodline, then Paul is out. So now you've got a little dissension there. Solo attacking Jimmy, who came out to help protect Jey, only for Jimmy to super kick Jey and cost him his match versus Austin Theory for the United States Championship. And that just kind of adds to a more conflicted Jey. Like, did my brother really turn on me? Was everything that Paul was saying was right? Or do I want to not believe that my brother had my best intentions? And do I want to go with Paul Heyman, who I don't necessarily trust? I thought it was really interesting the way that they are kind of twisting and turning Jey. And I think Jey's doing a great job of conveying this message. I thought this was really, really interesting to add more layers. This is what we talk about every week with this story. There's always layers to it. It's like an onion. You start peeling it back, and you've got more and more and more and more. This one right here, now centering around Jey specifically, I thought this was a really nice episode to kind of add more coloring to what we already have with a really good fleshed out Jey story. What did you think about this? What did you think about the storyline that ran through the entire SmackDown show with Jey Uso and just the constant turns and just the twists with everything to where we are now, where we still don't have an answer for Jey? We're not sure. I think now we're probably more confused than ever if he's going to side with Jimmy or if he's going to side with Roman.
Exactly. And that's what you want. A little bit of intrigue, a little bit of wondering what's going to happen. And then the interesting part is you say, okay, you got these two characters, Jimmy and Jey. Does Jimmy get a singles run? Does he get an opportunity to have matches and start that process? It just feels like the Usos have so much more to give. So in the end, I think if you just think forward, okay, if Jey decides that, okay, I don't trust Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman, does he stay with his brother? How does that look? Does the bloodline take a different shape with other members? So at this point in time, you're working in trying to figure out, okay, where is this angle going to go? So that's Jimmy. I think Jimmy's talented. You've seen him obviously in matches before that have had meaning on a singles basis. And you remember a couple years ago in the COVID era, you started to see Jimmy and Jey have singles matches highlighted by Jey, I think, getting that main event match against Roman Reigns. Now you look at it from Jey's side, and it's the ultimate torture. I mean, like, man, this guy is getting, a lot of different struggles from a lot of different sides, from your brother to Roman Reigns to all the emotional meltdowns. Excuse me. It's going to be great to see how it all plays out. I thought it was well told. Now, for me personally, do I like this? It's not as interesting as when you had others, but right now it's all about the feuding amongst the bloodline, and I'm fascinated to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think this is going to pay dividends. I think this is going to be really, really good. And look, this is something that I thought about when I was watching this unfold. You really haven't seen the Usos get broke up. There's never been that conversation of the Usos getting broke up. You've never seen Jimmy or Jey really get long established title runs or long established singles runs. They've always been a tag team. I think this is the one tag team in WWE where WWE, I don't even know if they've ever thought about breaking them up.
So do you think
they always break up their tag teams?
So do you think Jimmy and Jey should fight at SummerSlam?
No, I don't think so. I think what you should do is leading up to that. I think the way you want to do it is you have Jimmy basically pleading for his brother to come to his side and trying to make amends for basically kicking him in the face. This is kind of the spark that lights that fuse, right? Him super kicking him and costing the match against Austin Theory. I think you have him trying to make amends and leading up to probably not SummerSlam, because I think at SummerSlam you want to get Roman Reigns solo versus the Usos. I think that would be the money match. I think leading up to Money in the Bank, you've got him basically pleading. I think you have Jey maybe siding with the tribal chief and siding with Solo and Paul, only to maybe have that turn again, kind of like what you had with Sami Zayn, kind of what you had with Jimmy, where it's at a major pay-per-view. You've got the twist there, and you can kind of then take those two, send them in the direction of taking on Roman and taking on Solo at SummerSlam. I think that would probably be where the money is. I think for a little bit you have Jey just be like, no, don't trust Jimmy. I'm going to go with Roman. And they kind of build a story around that for a couple weeks. And then last second, he ends up pulling back saying, no, I can't turn on my brother. And he goes off into the sunset with Jimmy. I think that would be interesting. Something else that was interesting, Asuka got a new belt. I wasn't even aware this was going on. Not till I tuned into SmackDown. So Asuka got a new belt, and guess who came out? Guess who showed back up? Yeah, if you said Charlotte, you would be 100% right. She jumps the line and appears to be the next contender. Doesn't have to fight her way back to the top. She just basically pulls the ticket, and she is next in line. I want to know what you thought about the new belt design, because it was basically the same old belt design, just with a yellow background instead of a red or a blue one. And good God, man. I'm so tired of this fascination with Charlotte. Like, I think she's great, right? But you know why I have never been able to get behind Charlotte's character? It's because of shit like this. It is, she shows up. She goes away for a couple of months, right? We haven't seen her since, was it WrestleMania? I think it had to have been WrestleMania. We haven't seen her since WrestleMania, I believe, where Rhea took the belt off of her. And she shows up, and next thing you know, she cuts the line. Bianca has a story set up with Asuka right now. Like, Bianca is supposed to be feuding with Asuka, and she just kind of inserts herself into the championship picture, and she is now the number one contender. I think Charlotte is great in ring. I think she's awesome. I think she does a pretty good job with her promos. I think she is a 10 times better heel than she is a babyface. I think she sucks at being a babyface. All that being said, I hate the way WWE uses her. I hate the way WWE constantly puts her at the top. You give her no struggle. There's nothing there for you to latch onto as a fan. There's nothing there for you to get invested in with her as a fan, because she is constantly put at the very, very top of the women's division, and she always ends up wrecking whatever story is currently going on when she comes back from wherever she's been. What are your thoughts on the new belt, and what are your thoughts on Charlotte? Because I'm so sick and tired of Charlotte.
Yeah, unfortunately, because that's the way it's going to be. Whenever she returns, she's the top of the card. She's Charlotte Flair. And it is, basically, it's like what I think you and I are clamoring for is let her have some feuds that don't involve the title. Like, dude, it's allowed. Like, she could have a feud with Raquel Rodriguez. She could have a feud with somebody else that could potentially, like, she doesn't always have to step into the title picture. She can always step into, like, one feud before the title picture, and that unfortunately, that's just how they keep using her. And you get this kind of, it's the law of diminishing return. It's like, oh, there's Charlotte. You get disappointed. And it's like, do I really want to see Asuka versus Charlotte? No. In regards to the belt, yeah, it's just been like, when we think of WWE, we think top of the notch. We think like, okay, they have the best staff, the best top of the line, creative people. And yeah, the WWE World Heavyweight Championship kind of looks cool on Seth Rollins. But I'll say this, I just think that when you look at belt designs, I just feel like they could have found something else that could have been much more impactful, a little bit more, special, a little bit more like, wow. I just like, okay, you get it, and we move on. I don't think that in regards to, for me, I just want to see the wingtip, and that's that. Everything else is just, I look at it and I say I would rate the completion of the new belts as a C+. Just that's what it is. It's there. It's great, but for WWE, you could have had like more bling. You could have had a lot better stuff. So that's the way I'm going to look at it.
Yeah, look, I was really looking forward to this when I found out that we were going to get a new belt. I was like, all right, cool. They could do something different here. They could really, they could really help separate themselves and really help differentiate what they've had. Because I don't think any of us have really been impressed with the belts. I don't think anybody else has really been impressed with the belt since the spinner belt with John Cena. It really feels like the last belt I think anybody was really invested in was maybe the Broken Skull belt that Stone Cold had. I thought that was a pretty cool belt. After that, it was probably the wingtip belt. That was the one that like you would be proud to have on your wall at home, and you wouldn't, feel weird about it. I feel like what they've done with these belts, it's so WWE logo forward, and it's like, yeah, okay, cool, we all get it, right? We all understand what company this is. You look at a traditional belt, something similar to what you have on AEW. Now, AEW has their logo right in the middle of their belt, but the actual belt itself, I think, is pretty freaking cool. I think it's freaking awesome. What we get with WWE, they just look weird. They look clunky. I'm not impressed. Cool. You slapped a new color of paint. It's basically you took a dirty pig and you just put lipstick on it, and you're like, here you go. And that's kind of what I feel like with the women's division. You have a dirty pig, and Charlotte's your lipstick, and I don't like that color lipstick. It makes me very upset. So we're gonna move on now. We're gonna move into AEW. And this is something that you and I were talking about when we were watching the show. We were texting back and forth, and we can't for the life of us figure out how Adam Cole gets from a bum-ass Jericho feud to MJF. I'm not sure how this happens. I'm not sure why this happens. I think we knew for a while that this was going to be the direction for Adam Cole. I think for a while we when he came back, he cut his promo when he was healthy. We knew that he was going to challenge MJF, but how surprised are you that we go this quickly from a Jericho feud? Usually Jericho feuds are long. They are drawn out. They are usually a couple months. I don't really feel like we ever really got the closure of this feud. I mean, it was a clunker of a pay-per-view match, then followed up by what was a pretty decent Dynamite match that was a tag team match. And I'll be honest with you, when I was watching that tag team match, I don't know if I mentioned this to you last week. When I was watching that tag team match, I felt like the biggest star in that ring was Britt Baker. Like, Chris Jericho is a legend. At least he's a legend in my mind, right? Chris Jericho is the greatest of all time. I put Chris Jericho over a guy like Ric Flair. Chris Jericho is my number one all-time guy. And in that ring, when I'm watching these guys wrestle, it's Adam Cole, it's Chris Jericho, it's Britt Baker, it's Saraya. Britt Baker is the big star in that ring. Britt Baker is the moneymaker. Britt Baker is the one that I want to watch. She has a feel that is palpable. She has a look that is superstar. When they were standing in the ring together at the very, very end with their arms raised, I looked at Alyssa and I was like, why does Britt Baker feel like a bigger star than Adam Cole? Like, Adam Cole has been there, done that. He is the guy. But Britt Baker feels like she is a much larger star to me. So for him to go from kind of scooting along against Chris Jericho in a feud that was not very well done, it was not very good. I don't really feel like we ever got the conclusion that we were really looking for, to then jumping into a feud with MJF. It kind of shocking to me. How shocked were you and how confused by this are you? And I do want to get to the promos in a few moments here, because I thought those were great, but I was really confused at how we got from point A to point B. Were you just as bewildered by this as I am?
The way you look at it is, it was written that Adam Cole was going to fight MJF, but unfortunately, once the feud with Chris Jericho was a dud, they should have rewrote it. They should have just said, oh, shoot, we need to have one more 2-week stint with this. We need to recap it. We need to just extend it out a little bit before MJF. And I think that, obviously the next pay-per-view is going to come, but you could have even had like a really shortened version of the build-up for Adam Cole and MJF, because Cole's there. The problem is that sometimes with scheduling and the way things are written, you already know, okay, Tony Khan and most bookers will book 2-3 months in advance. You want to kind of tell your story and then work backwards. But I think in this situation, you can't just go from the dud of a match that they had into a world title picture, because that's best of the best. And unfortunately, the feeling is unfortunate because it's not believable just yet. It's just based on reputation. And when you look at the way in which you would have wanted Adam Cole to jump into MJF, you would have wanted it's just really, sometimes feuds happen and they don't go the way you want it to. But I just think that when you look at it, it's just poorly produced. It's really bad. When you look at how, you go from one feud, it doesn't lend to credibility that Adam Cole belongs in the ring right now with MJF. He's not the best person that's the most over, that's the most hot. It's just not. I could even argue that Switchblade Jay White is a little bit more believable of a bigger star than Adam Cole is right now. So you can't have that. Adam Cole's there. Look, he could be worthy, but what you needed to do is you needed to have a closure of the feud in a much different manner, so that when he steps in the ring, you're like, huh? You and I had the same reaction. We're like, what? This doesn't make any sense, other than, okay, it was written, so now we got to go execute it. It's disappointing But I'm excited to see it, though. You said it. We started it with some disappointment, boy, did those two, in the manner in which they handled their business, they at least made the best of the intro build to what should be, I think, a feud that can deliver. And I think MJF said it. My take on the promos was simple. Well done. Exactly what you needed to do. Bring up the heat. Bring up all the stuff that you need to, the little inside stuff that makes people pop. But I think the line that caught my attention was, we have a chance to have a generational feud here that can go for a long time. And this should play out slowly. MJF, Adam Cole should have a lot of matches together, and they should end up being very well. And both performers should walk away elevated after these next few months.
Yeah, I think the promos really help kind of set the tone and really help kind of set the tenor for what this is going to be. I think this is going to be a knockdown, drag out at all costs type of feud. And I thought the promos were fantastic. You had, like you said, you had a lot of insider stuff, whether it was MJF referencing Vince McMahon, whether it was MJF referring to Adam Cole being frail and making crack whores jealous, which I thought was a great line. You had Adam Cole talking about how nobody in the back respects MJF. I thought what we have here is really, really good. The two of these guys going back and forth with each other, I think, was fantastic. And I think it helps set the tone. I think our big issue is how did we get to that point, right? Like what took place to transition us to there? And I guess sometimes the answer is you just don't need a good transition. You just jump in sometimes. And I think that's what AEW did here. They just jumped in, and it's going to be what it's going to be. Something else that kind of feels like it's going to be what it's going to be. We had an announcement that CM Punk and FTR are going to main event on AEW Collision. They're going to be taking on Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Samoa Joe. You and I feel really different about a lot with Collision. You and I really, I think, feel different about CM Punk's involvement in general. I want to know how you feel about Samoa Joe getting wedged in here, because, look, I get FTR, I get Jay White, Juice Robinson. That makes sense. They have a feud that's going on television. I get FTR and CM Punk because they are friends. If you follow any of the stuff that goes on outside of Dynamite, you know that FTR have really been the ones who have been pulling for CM Punk for a while now. I don't like the fact that we didn't really get anything on TV. I hate when they do stuff off TV and then they expect you to kind of know what's going on TV. That drives me nuts, because I think it's disjoining for just casual viewers. Casual viewers are like, oh, CM Punk, FTR, like, how did they get? Okay, I guess let's just go with it. I like all these guys, so it should be fine. To pull Samoa Joe into Jay White, Juice Robinson, that makes no sense to me. We haven't seen these guys working together. We haven't seen these guys team together. I don't know of anything that has happened off screen for these guys to be together. Now, look, I don't watch ROH. I don't have Honor Club, so I don't watch that, right? I do follow along with what's taking place on Honor Club because there are a ton of reports that I stick to and I read through, as well as I do pay attention to what takes place on the pay-per-views. But I do not watch their regular programming. So unless something has happened that I do not know about, I don't know how Samoa Joe, Jay White, Juice Robinson come together. What I would have liked to have seen is you maybe pull somebody, and we're going to talk about a possible match for CM Punk at Forbidden Door here later on in news and notes, possibly go and pull somebody from New Japan. You can insert them into Bullet Club Gold, or you can go get an old Bullet Club member even if you wanted to and insert them. Mind you, Jay White has relations with, I don't know, all the guys from the Elite. So if you could maybe break one of them away to kind of join in, I think it adds a little bit more intrigue. I think at some point we will get CM Punk versus somebody from the Elite. I know they're trying to keep them all separated because none of them want to work together right now. But there are things that you could have done here to really make this more interesting. Instead, you go with Samoa Joe. And I just feel like he was the square block trying to get crammed into a round hole, and it just doesn't make sense to me. How do you feel about Samoa Joe in this main event on June 17th on AEW Collision's premiere show?
It's Samoa Joe is very interesting in how he's been used at AEW. It's like he's there, goes away a little bit, has stuff, then goes away a little bit. It's like a stop and start in regards to relevancy that I find to be extremely interesting. Look, when it was announced, I said, okay, it's good. It's star power. I like it. I think FTR and CM Punk should have a faction. And I think they need to add one more person. And maybe they need to add Samoa Joe. I think that would be great if he turned on those dudes and you can have a feud. Or, you have something happen where, something different out of the box, out of the ordinary. Maybe Samoa Joe gets pissed that they lose and then he, decides that he's just livid that they lost after Juice Robinson takes the fall, which you and I expect fully that you're not going to have.
We totally expect that.
I think we laughed and said, oh, well, Jay White does not taking the pin. Samoa Joe doesn't need to take another pin. But the way he's been treated, probably it's going to be Samoa Joe getting these ass beaten and get totally devalued. But he needs to get pissed and he needs to rough up Jay White, rough up Juice Robinson to piss off Jay White. So it doesn't have to be, it just has to be huge pop, and I guess the mission would be huge pop for CM Punk, nice, decent match, elevate Samoa Joe's next feud with whoever it's going to be, and that's how it's got to be. Whether it be with CM Punk, maybe they lose, and then Samoa Joe just goes apeshit and talks trash to Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe talks trash to CM Punk. You move forward, and then you probably could do that. And I think that that's maybe, I'm not sure if you said that was going to be one of the feuds potentially was Samoa Joe that entering into Collision. I know that we had a report that CM Punk was going to have an outside-the-box feud, and I think you said Samoa Joe. But if it's not, I think that might also be another angle where, okay, they lose, but then Samoa Joe does a heel tactic or does something to upset the apple cart with CM Punk, and then you move in that direction for a feud. But
yes, Samoa Joe was one of the guys that was supposed to be featured against CM Punk.
So then that's what probably will happen. But man, cuz you got something with Jay White, bro. Every time that dude's in the ring, I mean, personally, it's weird the world we live in. When he does that bullet to the face, I cringe a little bit. Like, ooh, is this allowed? Like, I just wish we weren't in this PC world where you're just like, it sucks. Where the cancel culture just it got to me, and I noted that. I said, ooh, I loved it. I loved when he put the bullet thing to Ricky Starks on Dynamite. But then the next thought I had was, ooh, is that allowed? Is that something that's going to be bad news or something he'll have to answer for? And I was like, who cares? But I thought it was sweet, dude. It was believable. Like, I got you. You're the next victim. That's perfect. Dude, Jay White is just legit, smooth, great decision to go to AEW. I just don't think he needs to be in the Bullet Club with Juice Robinson. It just feels like major star and hanger-on. You know what I mean? Put Jay White into some. Yeah. I mean, damn, man, Jay White.
Well, if you're going to do your own faction of Bullet Club, your own version of it, you need to add somebody a little more credible. Like, look, Juice Robinson's decent, but
like the next person,
Juice Robinson needs to be like what Hangman Page was when Hangman Page was coming up, right? Like it was Kenny Omega, it was the Elite, and then you kind of tossed in Hangman Page, and surrounding that you had Adam Cole. You had other guys who could really help elevate him and bring him up. You don't necessarily get that here with Juice Robinson. Like Juice Robinson needs to be brought up. He needs to be elevated. You need to add somebody else to that mix.
Yeah, it's something more believable. But listen, it's slow build, but I'm definitely excited with Jay White's potential. The North American title ain't it. You need a title that is worthy of Jay White. Whatever you call it, transatlantic, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, transatlantic, something.
Transatlantic.
I don't know, North American. I don't know. I was thinking in their, putting myself in their mind, and then of course the first word I say just sounds really bad. But I look at it and I say, that's what the thought. Like, oh, okay, that's really dumb. But hey, that's what happens in meetings. You spitball an idea, and they'd be like, John, transatlantic. I think we're gonna move away from that idea. Next. I was like, shit, I had my chance to throw out my idea. But they need an Intercontinental title. And they've tried with North America.
They do.
And WWE is doing the same thing. These NXT North American titles have always been there, but nobody made the belt. Gunther, obviously, is the guy that we all know is the Intercontinental Champion. And that's perfect description of what that belt means. We need that belt for Jay White. Whatever you want to call it. not ever including my ideas. Just put in a belt that is worthy of a guy that's believable, that has a great theme music, that is believable, and you got to take him now to the next level. You don't need to rush on Jay White. Everybody knows what the dude is. You got to get him going. I'm a big fan, clearly, and I think that I like what I've seen so far on Dynamite. When he's on there, I watch it, and I'm like, oh, man, this guy's sweet. I like it, but we agree. I think that it's going to be interesting to see how Collision starts off. But I'm excited for the 17th, which is 1 week from today, baby. I can't wait to see the re-debut of CM Punk.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm not really interested. Again, you are higher on CM Punk than I do, and again, I think we just feel differently about CM Punk at this stage of the game. I'm not a fan of CM Punk anymore. I don't like the antics. I don't like the crybaby attitude. I don't like I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. I don't like how he is so divisive of a locker room. Also, I used to be a big proponent of CM Punk. I used to be all about the guy who went against the company, right? I was so pro CM Punk when he was going against WWE. I was like the man versus the machine. Let's go. But as time has kind of gone by and I've kind of seen more of CM Punk, the more I don't necessarily like him. And that transitions into basically AEW giving him his own show. AEW Collision will pretty much be ran by CM Punk. He is going to be the headline talent. He is going to have a strong hand in creative. He basically got Ace Steel back. Now Ace Steel will be working remotely. Basically, all AEW Collision is going to be all of the people who don't have issues with CM Punk and will be all of the people that CM Punk wants to work with. So essentially, Collision is going to be his show. You feel like Punk is going to thrive on Collision. I kind of want to know why. Is it for all those reasons I've kind of already laid out? Do you think this basically gives him a fresh start? Do you think him having the control over some of the creative, do you think that's a good thing for the show itself? Do you think it's a good thing for Punk? Do you think it's a good thing for AEW? I kind of want to get your take because, again, you and I have very different views on CM Punk at this stage in his career, and you seem to look on him with much more favorable eyes than I do.
Yeah, I just think that, look, it's tapping in on a name. Yeah, it is overhyped. It is a situation that is not it's not earned yet. CM Punk in AEW just started to scratch the surface. So this run has to be to reestablish that he can work. I mean, right now, unfortunately, he's known for a backstage rant, the drama that has permeated his career in WWE, and unfortunately, you can't escape the visual of the botches that he had against Hangman Page. I think if I'm correct, he tried the lariat from Hangman Page a couple times, maybe against Moxley, and just looked awful, horrendous, where he fell twice and he kept trying to do it. So you can't have that visual. So that's my hope, is that the work with FTR will get him back in shape, will get him back to looking like a wrestler. Look, he's at the stage now where he doesn't need to be doing high-flying moves. His antics need to be tapping into the heat that he's generated backstage and utilizing ring psychology. He doesn't have to do high spots. He doesn't have to flip and copy other people's moves to get heat. What he needs to do is work matches professionally and create stories in the ring that resonate. And this is the final run. If he doesn't deliver, it's done. It's time to move on.
Yeah, look, I think what you have with CM Punk is I think he's a little bit older, right? I don't think his body's necessarily conditioned. You've seen anytime he starts to wrestle more than a couple times a month, he tends to break down. He shows up, he'll win a belt, and then he gets hurt, and then he's out for 6 months. I think what CM Punk needs to do is work himself into stories where he basically has to wrestle every other week. Or he has to be on screen every other week. I don't think this guy has the physical capability anymore to be on TV every single week, putting out bangers of matches. And you've kind of talked about kind of some of the rust that's still there. And look, that rust was there basically 6 months to a year into his run in AEW, and he was still kind of botching some of those moves. You just don't need to see that, right? I think my big concern is this show has essentially been gifted to him. does his attitude and does his need to be basically the main event guy, because it's what it kind of feels like. I haven't really seen him really build anybody up. I haven't seen him really put anybody over. To me, it seems like it's a lot of me first. You're an older wrestler. When you're an older wrestler, you should be out there building guys up. You should be putting guys over. I haven't seen that from Punk yet. And look, it's been very disruptive, his time in AEW, not just because of some of the antics and things that have gone on, but because he's there, then he's hurt. He's there, then he's hurt. You really can't get a flow. Now, him being in charge of creative, I do have concerns because, again, it seems very me first. It seems all about me. It seems all about what I want to do and how can I get my guys over, not getting young talents over. And that was the whole thing that we wanted with AEW. And I think that's been our big concern from day 2 with AEW, was you end up bringing in some of these other names and they get pushed to the top. That pushes some of that younger talent to the bottom. And it kind of feels, it has a tenor of old school WCW, when WCW was grabbing everybody from WWE, and they had a lot of really good wrestlers, guys like Chris Jericho, and then they got pushed to the bottom. We don't want to see that happen. It'll be interesting to see what takes place with Collision. Collision debuts next Saturday, so check that out. We'll be watching, and we'll be working it into our show. It should be interesting. I do want to get your show of the week before we move on to news and notes. What was your show of the week this week?
This week, my show of the week was Raw. I thought that you had wonderful segments. Dynamite close second, with SmackDown being third. I thought that when you look at how Raw flowed and you had the main event with Seth Rollins and you had a lot of intrigue, a lot of fan interaction, I thought Raw was the best show of the week. And I think that, too, when you see Gunther being able to have now a faction that also is starting to kind of plant their seeds, too, of being characters that are interesting. I just think that anytime you have, the Miz and you have these great interactions and everything going on, I think that Raw is starting to cement itself as a really consistent show that can be entertaining.
Yeah, I think Raw, basically the way you laid it out, Raw, Dynamite, SmackDown, in that order. I thought Raw was fantastic. I thought you got a lot of really good young people on Raw doing some good things. I thought you had some older vets doing good things. I thought you had the foundation for upcoming stories. I thought you had some good in-ring work. I really liked what we got from Monday Night Raw this week. I thought Dynamite was, again, a good program. I thought SmackDown, from what we are used to, right, from the level that SmackDown usually operates at, it left a little bit more to be desired. But all that being said, it was still a pretty decent show. But I would go Raw first. Take that in if you have some time to watch wrestling, then Dynamite, then SmackDown. Would you like some news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
Could this WWE superstar hang them up soon? Almost a year ago, last August, after a live taping of WWE Raw in his hometown of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Edge teased that the next time he was in front of the city, he thought could be his last. In his address, he said, "I can't wait to hopefully come back one last time here in Toronto. I'm looking at the calendar, and we usually come here in August. So next August, I plan on seeing each and every one of you. And in a perfect world, we'll say goodbye to each other that night." Scotiabank Arena in Toronto just announced a very special appearance for their upcoming August date for WWE SmackDown. Toronto's own Edge will be planned to appear that night. It's a big event taking place on Friday, August 18th. So could this be the last time Edge appears in his hometown as a WWE wrestler? We talked about this over a year ago. So this might be his last show, or we could be nearing the very, very end of Edge's career in WWE. Sounds like one of the main events for SummerSlam could be, actually it will be, Cody Rhodes versus Brock #3. However, this one comes with a special stipulation. According to Dave Meltzer's WWE sources, the match will be one of SummerSlam's main events, and he writes, "There has been a lot of talk about adding a stipulation. One of the ideas is a bull rope match. That is not official, and there are multiple other ideas for that match on the table, and no final decision has been made. A bull rope match typically features a length of rope connecting both wrestlers and differs from one other similar-sounding match by having a cowbell in the middle. Reports are Cody did present the idea of a dog collar match, but Vince shot this down. Dog collar match was, I believe, something that Dusty Rhodes and Roddy Piper have made basically important and special in wrestling, and this was not a Vince-made match, so Vince said no. I think Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar in a dog collar match would be unreal. I think it'd be fantastic, but Vince said no. Sticking with big matches on pay-per-views, Kenta versus CM Punk is being teased and speculated for AEW New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door. So if you don't know the history, CM Punk admitted to stealing the go-to-sleep finishing move from Kenta, and he's never credited him for it. There is a post online circulating where he basically says, I stole it from the poor bastard and basically screw him. Kenta, who is really pissed off about this, regularly goes off on CM Punk on social media for this, and it seems like there is some real heat between the two. So if you get a chance, go find Kenta's Twitter. He posts a ton of stuff. There's, again, another clip of CM Punk admitting to stealing the finishing move. This could be a dream match, and this could be a match at New Japan Pro Wrestling's Forbidden Door. Again, my thought process is Forbidden Door is on the 25th. You've got Collision debuting on the 17th. I don't know. You feel like you just insert Kenta into Bullet Club Gold. You could, there you go. Let's move on. Not Samoa Joe. But instead, this is where we're at. And it is with sad, heartbreaking news that we announced that WWE Hall of Famer, the Iron Sheik, real name Hassanin Khosrow Ali Vaziri, passed away at the age of 81 on Wednesday. Did I do a good job pronouncing that name? You would know better than me.
Khosrow.
I don't know if I did.
I think if you remember, a lot of people just said Khosrow. And,
Khosrow.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I think that the Iron Sheik will forever be known as one of the early heels that transcended the business.
He was unreal. He was absolutely fantastic. The official Iron Sheik Twitter account, which if you don't follow, you should follow because it's great, confirmed that the former WWE champion's passing, sharing a beautiful eulogy of his life and career. He is survived by his wife of 47 years, Carly, and his 3 kids, Tanya, Nikki, Marissa, as well as his son-in-law, Eddie. The Iron Sheik will be missed. He was unreal. He was incredible. A really good dude in real life, too. So it's sad when one of those guys pass away. That's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes, my brother.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you've agreed or disagreed with anything that you heard today, if you feel like another character or personality should be elevated in AEW, hit us up at Detroit Podcast. Always involved and enjoy reading the takes and opinions of those that listen to the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. Anywhere you listen to your favorite audio broadcast, make sure you hit us up and subscribe. Hit Detroit Sports Podcast, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything, Google Play Store, anywhere where podcasts are available. Type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. Great hour breaking down wrestling. Look forward to next week when a lot of great things are happening, previewing Collision, previewing what's happened, and looking at what feuds take and how they take shape. I can't wait for it. Make sure you stay tuned. Hit us up, and make sure to listen to next week's edition of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast.